Millionaire marries a homeless woman as a bet, and is surprised when he discovers that. The rain poured down relentlessly in New York City, creating a symphony of droplets that danced against the pavement. The streets were slick, reflecting the gleaming lights of the skyscrapers above. Inside a luxurious bar on the Upper East Side, the atmosphere was a stark contrast to the gloomy weather outside. Laughter echoed off the plush velvet walls as well-dressed patrons indulged in expensive cocktails, their glasses clinking together in celebration of wealth and camaraderie. Lucas Hawthorne, a striking figure with tousled dark hair and piercing blue eyes, sat at a table surrounded by a group of friends. His tailored suit hugged his athletic frame, exuding an air of confidence that was almost palpable. He leaned back in his chair, a smug smile playing on his lips as he recounted tales of his latest business ventures. The table erupted in laughter as he exaggerated the details, basking in the adoration of his peers. "Honestly, guys," Lucas said, a hint of arrogance lacing his voice, "I've never met a homeless woman in my life. I mean, what are the odds? They're all just a bunch of drifters, right?" He tossed back the last of his whiskey, enjoying the way his friends nodded in agreement, lost in the lavishness of their lives. "Come on, man," one of his friends, Jake, leaned in with a mischievous grin. "You can't tell me you've never thought about it. What's it like to be with someone who doesn't have a dime to their name? It's practically a fantasy." Lucas chuckled, waving his hand dismissively. "I'd be bored to death. What could we possibly have in common? I'm all about 5-star restaurants and private jets. A woman living on the streets? No thanks." His friends laughed, but Jake's expression turned serious. "How about this? I bet you a fortune that you can't marry a homeless woman in a month. If you don't, you donate $1 million to charity." The challenge hung in the air, a tantalizing prospect that made Lucas's heart race with excitement. "Are you serious?" Lucas raised an eyebrow, intrigued. The idea was ludicrous, but a part of him relished the thrill of the challenge. "You really think I can't do it?" "Not a chance," Jake replied, confident. "You're all talk, Lucas. Prove us wrong." With a smirk curling at the corners of his mouth, Lucas leaned forward, his competitive spirit ignited. "Fine. You're on. In 1 month, I'll be married to a homeless woman, and if I don't, I'll make that $1 million donation." The table erupted into cheers, their laughter mingling with the clinking of glasses as they toasted to Lucas's audacious wager. As the night wore on, Lucas's mind raced with the implications of his impulsive decision. He exited the bar, the heavy rain drenching him almost immediately. The cool droplets felt refreshing against his skin, but a sense of unease settled in his stomach. He had always been the one in control, and now, he was embarking on a challenge that felt reckless. Walking through the streets, he gazed at the bustling city around him, filled with people rushing to their destinations. How could he ever find a homeless woman willing to marry him? The thought seemed absurd, yet a strange thrill surged through him. He imagined the headlines, "Millionaire marries homeless woman." It would be sensational, and part of him reveled in the idea of being the center of attention. Lost in thought, he caught sight of a group of homeless individuals huddled under a bridge, seeking shelter from the rain. A pang of guilt washed over him as he observed their plight. They were real people with real stories, but in his mind, they were still just characters in a game. He shook his head, trying to dismiss the feeling. This was just a bet, after all. As he walked further, Lucas's thoughts drifted to Clara, a name he had yet to discover but somehow felt destined to find. He imagined a woman with wild hair and fierce eyes, someone who would challenge him in ways he couldn't foresee. But deep down, he still held on to his initial beliefs. He was a successful businessman, and she would be a mere pawn in his game. Back at his penthouse, Lucas poured himself another drink, his mind swirling with thoughts of the wager. "What have I gotten myself into?" he muttered to himself, staring out at the glimmering skyline. The city was alive, but he felt an emptiness inside. The thrill of the challenge overshadowed the reality of what lay ahead. The next morning, with the sun shining brightly, Lucas awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. He would take on this challenge headfirst. After all, he was a Hawthorne. Success was in his blood. He dressed sharply, determined to approach the task with the same fervor he applied to his business deals. His first step was to immerse himself in the world he knew little about. He visited shelters and soup kitchens, trying to understand the lives of those who lived on the streets. But as he walked through the dimly lit rooms filled with weary faces, he felt out of place. His designer shoes contrasted sharply with the worn-out sneakers and scuffed boots surrounding him. "Excuse me, sir," a kind-faced volunteer approached him. "Are you here to help?" Lucas hesitated, caught off guard by the question. "Actually, I'm looking for someone," he replied, not entirely sure how to articulate his intentions. "A homeless woman." The volunteer's brow furrowed in confusion. "You want to find a homeless woman? For what purpose?" Lucas chuckled nervously, "Just for a project. I want to understand their stories." "Everyone here has a story, but they're not just projects," she said firmly, her gaze steady. "You'll need to earn their trust before you can even begin to understand." Feeling chastised, Lucas nodded, realizing that he had underestimated the complexity of the situation. He spent hours talking to the volunteers, listening to their experiences, but as he left the shelter that day, he felt no closer to finding his project. The idea of marrying a homeless woman suddenly seemed more daunting than he had anticipated. As the days passed, Lucas frequented various shelters and community centers, trying to connect with the people he encountered. He met men and women with dreams and aspirations, but no one who fit the mold of the challenge he had accepted. The more he learned, the more he realized how little he truly understood. Then, one afternoon, while visiting a small community art program at a local shelter, he laid eyes on her. Clara sat at a table, her fingers stained with paint as she concentrated on her canvas. Her dark hair fell in waves around her face, and her intense gaze was focused solely on her art. He felt an inexplicable pull toward her, something he had never experienced before. As he approached her, she glanced up, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice guarded. Lucas cleared his throat, suddenly feeling out of his depth. "I'm Lucas. I'm interested in art." Clara raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "And what does a rich guy like you want with art? Shouldn't you be at a gallery sipping champagne?" He could feel the heat rising to his cheeks, but he refused to back down. "I want to understand. I want to learn about the stories behind the art." She shook her head, a bitter smile creeping onto her lips. "You're just another guy who thinks he can save us with a few kind words and donations. It doesn't work that way." Lucas felt challenged by her resistance, a fire igniting within him. "I'm not here to save anyone. I just want to know more about you. About your art." Clara's expression softened slightly, but she remained cautious. "Why? What's in it for you?" "Just curiosity," he said, the truth of his intentions starting to unravel. "I accepted a challenge, and now I want to know what it's really like." "Curiosity?" she echoed, her voice laced with skepticism. "Or do you just want to fulfill a bet?" Lucas swallowed hard, realizing that the game he had entered into was becoming more complicated than he'd anticipated. The thrill of the wager had shifted, and he was beginning to see Clara as more than just a means to an end. He wanted to know her story, to understand her struggles, and perhaps, to find a genuine connection that transcended the superficiality of his challenge. But Clara was not ready to let her guard down, and he could sense the walls she had built around herself. The chase had just begun, and as he stood there, he knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would change both of their lives forever. Lucas Hawthorne stood before the mirror in his lavish Manhattan apartment, adjusting the cufflinks on his pristine white shirt. He was a man of privilege, with every luxury at his fingertips, but he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that his life was missing something. Just days ago, fueled by the heady concoction of alcohol and bravado, he had accepted a reckless bet that would soon lead him into a world he had never bothered to understand. A woman without a home. He had no idea what that even meant. After a night spent in the company of his wealthy friends, Lucas found himself in a new and unfamiliar territory. Armed with a designer jacket and an air of arrogance, he stepped out of the bar, where laughter and clinking glasses faded into the background of a drizzly New York evening. The rain splattered against the pavement, but he barely noticed, his mind racing with thoughts of the wager and how he would fulfill it. The following day, Lucas decided to research homelessness, convinced that it would give him an edge in his ridiculous challenge. He perused the internet for articles and statistics, but the numbers and facts felt distant, like a foreign language he could barely grasp. He realized that to truly understand the lives of those living on the streets, he needed to venture out from his insulated bubble. Dressed in tailored trousers and an expensive trench coat, he visited several shelters, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The first shelter he entered was bustling with activity. People were eating, chatting, and some were even laughing. Lucas walked around, feigning interest, but he couldn't help but feel like an intruder. "Can I help you?" a kind-faced volunteer asked, approaching him. "I'm just exploring," Lucas replied, forcing a smile. "Exploring?" The volunteer raised an eyebrow, skepticism lacing her tone. "You really should talk to some of the residents. They might share some stories." "Yeah, sure," Lucas said, but he felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He wasn't prepared for the rawness of their stories. He moved deeper into the shelter, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on a young woman sitting alone at a table, sketching on a piece of paper. Her brow was furrowed in concentration, and Lucas felt an inexplicable pull toward her. He approached, curious about what she was creating. "What are you drawing?" Lucas asked, trying to sound casual. The young woman looked up, her blue eyes sharp and guarded. "It's none of your business," she replied, her voice firm. Lucas was taken aback. "I'm just asking," he said, a hint of defensiveness creeping into his tone. "I'm Lucas." "Clara," she said, returning her attention to the sketch. Lucas shifted uncomfortably, feeling the weight of her dismissal. "Do you come here often? Why do you care?" Clara replied, not looking up. He hesitated, caught off guard by her directness. "I guess I'm just trying to understand the situation." Clara finally looked up, her expression challenging. "You think you can understand me? You have no idea what it's like to live out here." "Maybe not," Lucas admitted, intrigued by her fierce spirit. "But I want to learn." "Why?" she pressed, her gaze unwavering. "What's the catch? You're not here for charity work, are you?" Lucas paused, realizing that his attempt to connect was flimsy at best. "It's complicated. I made a bet, and I need to get to know someone like you." "A bet?" Clara's expression shifted from skepticism to incredulity. "You're serious?" "Yes," he replied, feeling a wave of embarrassment wash over him. "I know it sounds ridiculous, but I'm trying to figure it out." Clara scoffed, shaking her head. "You think this is a game? You're just going to waltz in here, play your little part, and then what? Go back to your fancy life?" "It's not like that," Lucas insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. "I want to understand you, your life, your struggles." Clara studied him for a moment, her defenses still up. "You really don't get it, do you? You can't just dip your toes into someone else's reality and expect to understand. It doesn't work that way." Feeling cornered, Lucas took a deep breath. "Okay, then tell me about it. Tell me what your life is like." Clara hesitated, as if weighing the decision to share her truth. "Fine," she said finally, her voice softer. "I'm an artist. I used to have a studio, a place to create. But life happened. I lost my job, my apartment. And now I'm here. Lucas felt a pang of empathy. What happened to your art? It's still there, she replied, gesturing to her sketchbook. But it's hard to create when you're just trying to survive. Why not sell your work, he suggested, hoping to offer a lifeline. Who would buy it? Clara snapped, her frustration evident. People like you don't care about someone like me. You see a homeless person and look away. Lucas frowned, struck by the truth in her words. I'm trying to change that. I want to help. Help, she echoed, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. You don't even know what help looks like. You think you can save me with a couple of donations and some pity? No, he stumbled, realizing how naive he sounded. I just thought thought what? Clara interrupted, her voice rising. That you could play the hero? That I'd fall for your charm and everything would be magically fixed? Lucas felt a sting of hurt but recognized the fire in her words. I didn't mean it like that. I just want to understand your story, Clara. Clara's expression softened slightly, and she closed her sketchbook, looking him in the eye. Understanding takes time, Lucas. It's not something you can just buy or win in a bet. I know, he said, the weight of her words settling on him. But I'm willing to try. Clara regarded him thoughtfully, her expression shifting from hostility to contemplation. Most people don't bother to try. They just assume they know everything. I want to be different, he said earnestly. I want to be someone who cares. The tension between them hung in the air for a moment. Clara sighed, her defenses momentarily lowered. Then maybe you should come back tomorrow. I'll show you what it's like to live here. But don't think it's going to be easy. Lucas nodded, a flicker of hope igniting within him. I'll be here. I promise. As he left the shelter, the rain had eased into a light drizzle, but the weight of the conversation lingered in his mind. For the first time, he felt a spark of purpose beyond the confines of his privileged world. Clara had opened a door, and he was determined to walk through it, ready to confront the harsh realities that lay ahead. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow over New York City, Lucas found himself in a small, dimly lit art studio within the shelter. The air was thick with the scent of paint, linseed oil, and a hint of something more profound hope. Clara was seated on a worn-out stool, her paintbrush dancing across a canvas that seemed to come alive under her skilled hand. Lucas watched her, mesmerized by the way her brow furrowed in concentration, the intensity of her focus transforming her into an artist in her element. That's beautiful. Lucas said softly, breaking the silence that enveloped the room. Clara looked up, her blue eyes narrowing as if trying to gauge his sincerity. It's just a sketch, she replied, a hint of defensiveness creeping into her voice. It's not finished. But it's raw, Lucas insisted, stepping closer to examine the vibrant strokes of color. There's something in your work that speaks volumes. It's full of life. Clara shrugged, a flicker of a smile threatening to break through her guarded demeanor. You're just saying that because you feel sorry for me. Lucas shook his head, feeling a surge of determination. No, it's not pity. I mean it. You have talent, Clara. You deserve to share it with the world. She turned back to her canvas, her expression unreadable. I don't need your validation, Lucas. I've learned to get by without it. There was a moment of silence as Lucas absorbed her words. He could sense the walls she had built around herself, fortified by years of struggle and disappointment. But what if you didn't have to? What if you could pursue your dreams without feeling like you're just surviving? Clara paused, her brush hovering above the canvas. Easy for you to say, right? You've never had to worry about where your next meal is coming from. You don't know what it's like to fight for every scrap of dignity. Lucas felt his heart tighten at her words. You're right. I don't. But I want to understand. I want to help you, if you'll let me. Clara put down her brush and turned to face him, eyes blazing. Help me how? By throwing money at me? I don't need charity, Lucas. I want to create, not be another project for someone like you. Lucas took a deep breath, trying to maintain his composure. I'm not trying to be your savior, Clara. I just want to support you, to see you succeed. I admire your spirit. You're not just a statistic, you're a person with dreams. She studied him for a long moment, her defenses still up but showing signs of wavering. And what about your wager? Your little bet? Is this just some game for you? Something to check off your list? Lucas felt the weight of her accusation. I know how it looks, and I regret ever making that bet. It was stupid and thoughtless. But I'm here now, and I want to do better. I want to know you not just as a part of a challenge but as a person. Clara's expression softened slightly, and Lucas seized the opportunity. Can I see more of your work? I want to understand what drives you. She hesitated but eventually nodded, leading him to a back room filled with more of her creations. Each piece told a story, some vibrant and joyful, others dark and haunting. The colors clashed and blended, reflecting the complexity of her experiences. This one, Clara said, pointing to a particularly striking painting, is about the struggle between hope and despair. I painted it during a really low point in my life. She looked at him, vulnerability etched on her face. It's hard to feel hope when you're constantly fighting just to stay afloat. Lucas stepped closer, absorbing the emotions conveyed in the artwork. It's powerful. I can feel the pain and the strength in it. You're so talented, Clara. You have a gift. Yeah, well, gifts don't pay the bills, she replied, a tinge of bitterness in her tone. I could help with that, Lucas offered impulsively. I could buy you art supplies, maybe even help you find a gallery to showcase your work. Clara turned away, anger flashing in her eyes. I don't want your money. I want respect for my art. I want to earn my place, not have it handed to me. Then let me help you earn it, he insisted. You deserve to be seen. Your art deserves to be shared. Clara crossed her arms, her expression softening slightly. What do you know about art? You're just a rich guy who decided to play hero. Lucas sighed, feeling the weight of her words. You're right. I don't know the first thing about being an artist or living on the streets. But I want to learn, and I want to support you in whatever way you need. Just tell me how. She looked at him, searching his face for any hint of insincerity. You really want to help? No strings attached. None, Lucas promised, his voice steady. I want to see you succeed. That's it. Clara studied him for a moment, and Lucas could see the flicker of hope battling against her fears. Okay, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. If you really mean it, then let's see where this goes. Lucas felt a rush of relief and excitement. Let's start by getting you some supplies. We can find a store together, and I'll help you pick out what you need. Clara nodded, a cautious smile breaking through her guarded exterior. All right, but I'm not going to let you buy me everything. I want to earn my keep. Deal, Lucas replied, grinning. No charity here. Just support. As they left the studio, the lightness in the air was palpable, a stark contrast to the weight of their previous interactions. Lucas felt invigorated, as if he had taken the first step into a new world, one filled with passion, creativity, and the promise of connection. They walked side by side, the bustling streets of New York City now seeming less daunting. Clara began to share her thoughts on art, her favorite artists, and what inspired her. With each word, Lucas felt himself drawn deeper into her world, captivated not just by her talent but by her spirit. Have you ever thought about doing a mural? He asked, genuinely intrigued. I think your style would be amazing on a larger scale. Clara's eyes lit up at the suggestion. I've thought about it, but I wouldn't know where to start. Plus, finding a space is a whole other challenge. Let's find a space together, Lucas suggested. We could talk to some local businesses, see if they'd let you showcase your work. I'm sure there are people out there who would love to support a project like that. Clara stopped walking, looking at him with a mix of surprise and hope. You'd really do that? Absolutely, he replied, his heart racing. You have so much to offer, and I want to help you share it with the world. As they continued down the street, Lucas felt the distance between them begin to shrink. They were no longer just a wealthy man and a homeless woman, they were two individuals discovering a connection that transcended their circumstances. The possibility of building something meaningful together lingered in the air, like the sweet scent of the city after a rainstorm. Thank you, Lucas, Clara said softly, her voice steady. For believing in me. Lucas smiled, realizing that it was not just Clara who needed saving. They were both searching for something more understanding, compassion, and perhaps, love. The atmosphere in the luxurious Manhattan bar was electric, filled with the laughter and chatter of affluent patrons. Lucas Hawthorne sat at the center of it all, surrounded by friends who hung on to his every word. A glass of expensive whiskey rested in his hand as he regaled them with tales of his latest business ventures. He leaned back, exuding an air of confidence that only wealth could provide. Can you believe I've never even met a homeless woman? He boasted, a hint of arrogance in his voice. I mean, how can they survive in a city like this? It's completely foreign to me. His friends exchanged glances, amusement flickering in their eyes. They were used to Lucas's bravado, but tonight, something stirred within the group, a challenge, perhaps. As laughter bubbled around them, one friend, Mark, leaned in, his expression mischievous. How about this, Lucas? I bet you $100,000 that you can't marry a homeless woman in a month. If you fail, you donate that to charity. Lucas's eyes sparkled with excitement at the prospect. The thrill of the challenge ignited something in him. You're on, he declared, a smirk twisting his lips. This will be the easiest bet I've ever taken. As the night wore on, the rain began to pour outside, the sound of droplets tapping against the window blending with the laughter inside. Lucas stepped out into the storm, a mixture of exhilaration and disdain fluttering in his chest. The idea of marrying someone who lived on the streets felt ridiculous, yet he couldn't shake the thrill it brought him. Little did he know that his life was about to change in ways he could never have anticipated. Days passed, and Lucas embarked on his misguided quest to find a homeless woman. He visited shelters, talked to volunteers, and read articles about homelessness. But his research remained superficial. It was more about gathering fodder for his boastful narrative than truly understanding the lives of those he intended to engage with. Then came the day he met Clara. It happened in a warm, bustling shelter where people gathered for a hot meal. Clara sat at a table, sketching absently on a piece of paper, her concentration evident. Lucas approached her, a rehearsed charm ready on his lips, but she looked up and met his gaze with a piercing glare that took him aback. What do you want? She asked, her voice steady, devoid of any warmth. Taken aback, Lucas stumbled over his words. I just wanted to see how you're doing. Clara raised an eyebrow, skepticism written all over her face. You don't know me. Why would you care? Lucas felt the walls around him beginning to close in. There was something about Clara that intrigued him, something that stirred in his chest and made him want to break through her defenses. He was used to people fawning over him, but Clara was different. Her indifference only fueled his desire to know her. I'm Lucas, he introduced himself, extending his hand, which she ignored. I'm just trying to understand. Understand what? She interrupted, folding her arms. You think you can just walk in here, play the Good Samaritan, and expect me to spill my life story? You're just another rich guy looking for a story to tell. Lucas felt a pang of frustration. I'm not like that. Then prove it, she shot back, her dark eyes challenging him. And it was at that moment that Lucas felt a shift within himself. He realized that this wasn't a game for him anymore. He wanted to know her story, to understand her struggles, and perhaps, just perhaps, to earn her trust. In the following weeks, Lucas found himself increasingly drawn to Clara. He would visit the shelter regularly, slowly peeling back her layers. Clara was a resilient artist, filled with dreams that clashed harshly with her reality. She shared her aspirations with him one evening, her voice softening as she spoke of her passion for painting. "I want to create art that speaks for people like me," she confessed, her eyes lighting up. "But it's hard when you don't even have the materials to work with." Lucas listened, captivated by her fire. "What do you need?" he asked, eager to help. But Clara shook her head, a shadow crossing her face. "I don't want your charity. I want to earn it, just like everyone else. I won't take handouts." The rejection stung more than Lucas expected. "It's not charity, Clara. It's support. I believe in you." Clara met his gaze, and for a moment, a flicker of vulnerability shone through her tough exterior. "You don't understand. I'm not a project, Lucas. I'm a person." Frustration mounted within him. He realized that the bet was not just a game, it was a doorway to something deeper, a connection that he was struggling to navigate. Clara's dignity was paramount, and he found himself genuinely caring for her, not as a means to an end, but as a person who deserved respect and love. Meanwhile, Lucas's friends began to voice their concerns. During one of their usual gatherings, Mark leaned in close to Lucas, his expression serious. "You need to be careful, man. This whole thing could blow up in your face. What if she's just using you?" Lucas rolled his eyes, brushing off the comment. "You don't know her. Clara is different." Mark frowned, still unconvinced. "I get it, but you need to be realistic. You're not just some guy to her. You're a millionaire. She might see this as an opportunity." Lucas felt a surge of anger. "You don't know anything about her. You think everyone has a motive? Maybe she just wants to live her life without judgment." The tension between them simmered, but Lucas's mind was made up. He was determined to prove his friends wrong and show them that his feelings for Clara were genuine. As days turned into weeks, Clara's walls seemed to soften, but the moment she caught sight of Lucas laughing with his friends, doubt crept back in. She watched from a distance, her heart twisting in her chest. They were everything she had tried to escape, privileged, carefree, and oblivious to the harsh realities of life. The fear that Lucas saw her merely as a project intensified, making her heart race with insecurity. Lucas sensed the shift in Clara's demeanor the next time he visited the shelter. She was distant, her laughter absent, and her smile strained. He approached her cautiously, concern etched across his face. "Clara, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice low. "I don't want to be part of your little game, Lucas," she said bluntly, avoiding his gaze. "You're just like the rest of them. You'll get bored and move on." "That's not true," he protested, frustration bubbling within him. "I care about you. I want to know you. I want to help you, not as a project, but because I genuinely like you." Clara looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "How can I believe that? You have everything, and I have nothing. This can't be real." Lucas took a step closer, his heart racing. "It is real, Clara. I'm here for you. Please don't shut me out." But Clara shook her head, the pain evident in her eyes. "I can't do this. I won't let myself be just another charity case." The conversation hung heavy in the air, both feeling the weight of their respective worlds colliding. Lucas felt helpless as Clara turned away, her heart guarded and her trust shaken. The distance that grew between them felt insurmountable, and he knew that unless he could break through, he might lose her forever. Lucas stood at the doorway of the art studio, a small yet vibrant space tucked away in a corner of the community center. The walls were splashed with bright colors, remnants of paintbrush strokes that spoke of creativity and passion. He had been visiting this place more frequently, drawn not just by Clara but by the stories of the artists who frequented it. Today, however, he felt a knot tightening in his stomach, exacerbated by the pressure of the bet he had made with his friends. Inside, Clara was engrossed in her work, her brow furrowed in concentration as she painted a large canvas. The colors danced under her brush, swirling into a beautiful depiction of a city skyline at dusk. Lucas watched her for a moment, mesmerized. There was something about her focus, her determination, that captivated him. But he also sensed an invisible barrier between them, a wall built from distrust and hurt. "Hey, Clara," he said softly, stepping inside and trying to sound casual. Clara turned, her expression shifting from concentration to guardedness. "What do you want, Lucas?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with an edge. "I just wanted to see how you were doing," he replied, attempting to sound nonchalant. "I saw the way you were painting. It looks incredible." "Thanks," she replied, her tone still cool. "But I'm busy right now. I have a lot on my plate." Lucas felt the sting of her words. "I get that," he said, taking a step closer. "I know things have been complicated between us. But I want to help, Clara. I really do." Clara put down her brush, crossing her arms defensively. "Help? Is that what you call it? You came here because of a bet, Lucas. You were just trying to prove something to your friends. This isn't a game for me." Lucas sighed, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "You don't understand. I thought I could just do it for the thrill of it all, but it's not like that anymore. You mean more to me than just a wager." "Do I?" Clara shot back, her voice rising. "Or am I just a project for you? Something to check off your list?" Before Lucas could respond, Mark, one of Lucas's friends who had been volunteering at the shelter, entered the studio. He sensed the tension in the room immediately. "Hey, Clara. I brought those art supplies you mentioned last week." "Thanks, Mark," Clara said, her tone softening as she turned to him. "I really appreciate it." Lucas watched the interaction, feeling a pang of jealousy as Mark handed Clara a box filled with vibrant paints, brushes, and sketchbooks. "You should see her work, man. It's incredible," Mark said, beaming with pride. "She's got a real gift." "Yeah, I know," Lucas muttered under his breath. He felt overshadowed, as if Clara's connection with Mark was more genuine than the one she had with him. "Lucas, why don't you help Clara with her project?" Mark suggested, oblivious to the tension. "You could learn a thing or two about art." "Art isn't really my thing," Lucas replied, forcing a smile. "I'd probably ruin it." Clara raised an eyebrow, a hint of sarcasm in her tone. "You'd probably ruin everything, wouldn't you?" Lucas began, but she cut him off. "Listen, I have enough to deal with without worrying about whether I'm just part of some bet or if I'm going to be disappointed again," she said, her voice wavering slightly. Mark looked between them, sensing the need for intervention. "How about we focus on the artwork for now? Clara, why don't you tell us about what you're working on?" Clara took a deep breath, visibly trying to regain her composure. "I'm working on a series about the city and its hidden stories. Each painting represents a different aspect of life here, the beauty and the struggle." She gestured toward the canvas. "This one is about hope, even in the darkest places." Lucas watched her as she spoke, admiring her passion and dedication. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he was losing her, that he hadn't fully grasped the depth of her struggles. "Can I help?" he asked suddenly, surprising himself with the eagerness in his voice. "I may not know much about painting, but I can at least try to support you in some way." Clara hesitated, her gaze flicking to Mark, then back to Lucas. "Support? What does that even mean to you? You say you want to help, but you don't really know what it's like to be in my shoes. I know it's not the same, but I want to understand, Lucas insisted, stepping closer. I've been learning, Clara. I've been visiting shelters, talking to people. I see how hard it is, and I want to be there for you. Mark nodded, encouragingly. He's serious, Clara. He's trying to be a better person. Maybe this could be a chance for both of you to connect, to bridge that gap. Clara looked between the two men, weighing her options. I don't want to be a charity case, she said finally, her voice trembling with emotion. And I don't want to be someone's project. I'm not trying to make you a project, Lucas said earnestly. I'm trying to be a friend. I just want you to know that I care. Do you? Clara asked, her voice softening, the walls she had built starting to crack. Because it feels like you're only here because of that stupid bet. Lucas's heart ached at her words. I didn't realize how much that bet would change everything. I thought it would be easy, but it's turned into something I never expected. I want you to know that I'm here for you, no strings attached. Clara studied him for a long moment, searching for honesty in his eyes. If you really mean that, then maybe. Maybe we can work together on this project. But I need you to understand something, this is my life, not a game. I won't let you hurt me. I promise, Lucas said sincerely, his heart racing with a mix of hope and fear. I'll do everything I can to prove it to you. As Clara nodded slowly, a flicker of trust passed between them, fragile yet promising. Mark smiled, sensing the shift in energy. Great. Let's get started then. I can help you both brainstorm ideas for the series. Thanks, Mark, Clara said, her voice regaining strength. She turned to Lucas, her expression softening. But just remember, this isn't something that happens overnight. It's going to take time. I'm willing to wait, Lucas replied, a sense of determination washing over him. As they began discussing the project, Lucas felt a renewed sense of purpose. It was as if he had stepped into a new chapter, one where he could truly be a part of Clara's world, not just an outsider looking in. He knew the road ahead would be filled with challenges, but for the first time, he felt ready to face them together with Clara. The rain fell relentlessly outside as Lucas Hawthorne paced back and forth in his upscale apartment, the sound of raindrops tapping against the windows echoing the turmoil in his mind. The extravagant life he had always known filled with luxury and privilege now felt distant and hollow in the face of the dilemma he faced. His friends had pushed him into this ridiculous bet, but what had started as a foolish challenge had morphed into something far more complicated. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration bubbling inside him like a boiling pot. Why did I ever agree to this? He muttered to himself, glancing at his phone, which lay silent on the coffee table. The impending deadline loomed over him like a storm cloud, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to lose something invaluable. Clara, the woman he had grown to care about deeply, was not just a pawn in a game anymore, she was a person with dreams, hopes, and a fierce spirit that had captivated him from the moment they met. The memory of their last conversation replayed in his mind, and he could still see the hurt in Clara's eyes when she discovered the truth behind his intentions. He had wanted to be honest with her, to explain how the bet had spiraled out of control, but the words had escaped him. He had never intended for this to happen, he didn't want to treat her like a trophy to be won. But after the bet had been made, the stakes had become incredibly personal. Lucas glanced at the clock, its ticking seeming to mock him. Just days remained until the wedding, and he had yet to find a way to bridge the widening gap between him and Clara. He couldn't help but remember how she had looked at him with a mixture of anger and betrayal. He had seen her at the shelter earlier this week, and her body language had been closed off, a fortress built to protect her from further disappointment. Lucas, you don't understand, Clara had said, her voice trembling with emotion. You think this is a game, but it's my life. You've turned my struggle into a joke. He had wanted to reach out and touch her, to show her that he was different from the men she had encountered in her life, but he had felt paralyzed by her pain. As he stood there, the weight of his choices pressing down on him, Lucas felt a surge of determination. He needed to make things right. He pulled out his phone and typed a message to Clara, asking her to meet him at the shelter that evening. He knew it was a risk, but it was a chance he had to take. That evening, the rain continued to pour, creating a melancholic backdrop as Lucas drove to the shelter. His heart raced with every passing moment, each beat echoing the uncertainty that enveloped him. When he arrived, the familiar sight of the modest building filled him with nostalgia and regret. He entered, shaking off the rain, and scanned the room for Clara. She was there, sitting at a table, sketching something on a piece of paper. Her brow was furrowed in concentration, and for a moment, Lucas marveled at her talent. The way she held the pencil, the intensity in her gaze, it was beautiful. But as soon as she sensed his presence, she looked up, her expression shifting from focus to guardedness. "Lucas," she said, her tone flat, revealing nothing of the emotions beneath the surface. "Clara," he replied, taking a step closer, his heart pounding. "Can we talk?" She hesitated, her fingers tightening around the pencil as if ready to strike it against the paper. "I don't know if there's anything left to say." Lucas swallowed hard, the lump in his throat making it difficult to speak. "I know I messed up. I was an idiot to make that bet and drag you into it. But I need you to understand that it's more than that for me now. I care about you, Clara. This isn't just about the stupid wager." Her eyes narrowed, skepticism etched across her face. "Is that so? Because it sure felt like I was just a challenge to you. Something to prove to your friends." "No," he exclaimed, desperation lacing his voice. "I thought I could handle it. I thought I could just play along, but you changed everything for me. I don't want to marry you because of a bet. I want to marry you because I love you." Clara's expression softened for a fleeting moment before hardening again. "You love me? How can I believe that when your friends are still pressuring you? You've got a wedding planned, and I'm just a pawn in your game." "Stop." Lucas took a step forward, his hands raised in a pleading gesture. "You're not a pawn. You're not a game to me. I didn't realize how deep my feelings were until I met you. You've opened my eyes to so many things. I want to share my life with you, not because of a bet, but because I believe in you. I believe in us." Clara's gaze faltered, and for the first time, Lucas saw a flicker of doubt cross her face. "And what if you win this bet? What happens next? Will you just go back to your privileged life, forgetting about me?" "No," he said, his voice steady. "I will never forget you. You've changed me, Clara. I want to support you as you chase your dreams, whatever they may be. I want to be there for you, not just for a month, but for the rest of our lives." Tears welled in Clara's eyes as she turned away from him, her defenses crumbling. "I don't know if I can trust you, Lucas. The thought of being hurt again is terrifying." "I understand," he replied softly, feeling the weight of her fear. "But all I ask for is a chance. Let me prove to you that I'm serious. Let me show you that I'm not going anywhere." Clara took a deep breath, her body language shifting slightly as she considered his words. "And what if you lose the bet? What if you decide that I'm not worth the trouble?" "I won't," he assured her, stepping closer. "Even if I lost the bet, I would still want to be with you. I'm not here for a prize, I'm here for you, Clara. Please, let's not let this bet define us." Silence hung between them, thick and heavy. Clara's eyes searched Lucas's face, searching for any hint of insincerity, but all she saw was earnestness. "I can't just forget how I felt when I found out about the bet," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I know, and I'm sorry," he said, his heart aching. "But I promise I'll do everything I can to make it right. Just give me one more chance." Finally, Clara looked away, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I need time to think, Lucas. I don't want to rush into anything. The last thing I need is to be hurt again. I understand, he replied, resignation creeping into his voice. Take all the time you need, but know that I'm here, waiting for you. As he turned to leave, a part of him felt the weight of disappointment settle in his chest, but another part was hopeful. He had put his heart on the line, now it was Clara's turn to decide if she would take the leap with him. The rain continued to pour outside, but Lucas felt a flicker of warmth inside him, a belief that love could overcome even the most daunting challenges. He just had to wait for Clara to see it too. The rain lashed against the pavement of New York City, the streets glistening under the streetlights like a million tiny diamonds. Lucas Hawthorne felt the weight of the world on his shoulders as he stood at the precipice of a life-altering decision. The date of the wedding was looming dangerously close, and the pressure from his friends was becoming unbearable. They had laughed and cheered when he first accepted the bet, but now their playful jests had morphed into something darker, more insistent. You're really going to go through with it, right? They would ask, nudging him with playful elbows, their laughter echoing in his head like the ominous rumble of thunder. But Lucas wasn't laughing. His heart raced, not from excitement, but from anxiety. He had come to know Clara not just as another face among the homeless, but as a woman with dreams, aspirations, and a spirit that shone brighter than any diamond. The thought of losing her gnawed at him, a relentless ache in his chest. He couldn't shake the feeling that beneath the bravado of his friends lay a fundamental misunderstanding of the depth of what he was experiencing with Clara. This was no mere game. His feelings for her were as real as the rain that soaked through his expensive coat. He had made a promise to himself. Tonight, he would confess everything to Clara, lay bare his soul, and ask for a chance to build a life together, not one bound by a ridiculous wager, but one rooted in love and genuine connection. The thought of her eyes lighting up with understanding, her laughter ringing in his ears, filled him with a flicker of hope. But doubt lingered, whispering cruelly that she might never forgive him for the way their relationship had begun. As Lucas navigated through the stormy streets, the cold wind biting at his skin, he felt the pull of destiny guiding him toward the shelter where Clara often spent her evenings. The familiar path felt different tonight, it was laden with purpose. Each step echoed his resolve, a mantra of love and honesty. When he finally reached the shelter, the atmosphere inside was warm and inviting compared to the tempest outside. The soft hum of conversation and the smell of freshly made soup wrapped around him like a comforting blanket. But his heart was racing, and all he could think about was Clara. He scanned the room, his eyes searching for her familiar silhouette. There she was, sitting at a table, sketching intently, the pencil moving swiftly across the page as if it were an extension of her very being. "Clara," Lucas called out, his voice barely above the noise of the room, but it caught her attention. She looked up, her expression shifting from concentration to surprise. The warmth in her gaze faded, replaced by a guarded wariness. "What are you doing here, Lucas?" she asked, keeping her voice steady, though he could sense the underlying tension. "I need to talk to you," he said, stepping closer, trying to close the distance between them. "It's important." Clara hesitated, her eyes flickering to the side as if weighing her options. "I don't think there's anything to say," she replied, her tone cool and distant. "Please," he pleaded, desperation creeping into his voice. "Just give me a moment. I promise I won't take up too much of your time." She studied him for a moment, and then, with a reluctant sigh, gestured for him to sit down. "Fine. But make it quick." As he settled into the chair across from her, he felt the weight of all his unspoken words pressing down on him. "Clara, before you start, I just want to say that I don't appreciate being part of a bet, Lucas. I thought you were different." Her voice was firm, each word laced with hurt. "I know," he interrupted, his heart racing. "And I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry. I never should have accepted that bet. At first, I thought it was just a joke, but then that everything changed. You changed me." Clara's expression hardened, and she crossed her arms defensively. "Changed you how?" You think you can just show up and say a few nice words to fix everything? You have no idea what it's like out there, she said, her voice rising slightly. I'm not some charity case or a project for you to fix. No, of course not. That's not what I mean, Lucas insisted, running a hand through his hair in frustration. I came here tonight to tell you that I don't care about the bet anymore. I want to be with you, Clara. Not because of some ridiculous wager, but because I've come to care for you deeply. You're not just a woman without a home, you're so much more than that. Clara's eyes narrowed, her skepticism palpable. And what do you think that means? You think you can just swoop in and save me? That's not how this works. Clara, it's not about saving you. It's about being with you, sharing our lives together, he said, desperation creeping into his voice. I want to support your dreams. I want to know you, the real you. Not the woman who's living on the streets, but the artist who has so much to offer the world. She looked away, her expression unreadable. And what if I can't be that person for you? What if I'm just too broken? Lucas leaned in, his gaze steady on her. We're all broken in some way, Clara. But that doesn't mean we can't find healing together. I want to help you, but I also want you to help me, to teach me about your world, your struggles. I want to be there for you, not as a savior, but as a partner. Partner, she echoed, the word tasting foreign on her tongue. You really think we can just leap into something like that? Do you even know what it's like to be where I am, to face the judgment and the rejection every single day? I don't, he admitted, his voice softening. But I want to understand. I want to learn from you. I've been so caught up in my own privilege that I never stop to consider what it means to truly struggle. And you've shown me that life is about so much more than money and status. Clara's eyes began to shimmer with unshed tears, but she quickly blinked them away, fighting against the tide of emotion. You don't know what you're asking for, Lucas. I don't know if I can trust you again after everything. His heart sank at her words. I know I've made mistakes, but I want to earn your trust back. I'm here to tell you that I'm done playing games. I want a real relationship with you. Please, just give me a chance to prove it. For a moment, they sat in silence, the noise of the shelter fading into the background as they locked eyes. Lucas could see the flicker of doubt in her gaze, but beneath it, there was something else, a glimmer of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, they could find their way back to each other. Lucas, she began, her voice trembling slightly. I'm scared. What if this doesn't work out? What if you end up resenting me for what I am? Then we'll face that together, he replied, his voice steady and resolute. I'm not going anywhere. I want to stand by your side, no matter what happens. If you'll let me. Clara took a deep breath, her defenses slowly crumbling beneath the weight of his sincerity. It's not that simple, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I know, he conceded, his heart aching for her. But I believe in us. I believe in what we can be together. Please, Clara. Just give me this chance. The rain continued to pour outside, but within the shelter, a fragile spark of hope flickered in the air between them. Lucas could see the walls around Clara start to falter, and as she searched his eyes for the truth, he knew that this was their moment. The storm raged outside the shelter, rain pounding against the windows as if it were trying to drown the very hope that flickered within. Lucas stood at the entrance of the building, his heart racing. He had never felt so compelled to confess his feelings to anyone, and now, faced with the prospect of losing Clara forever, the urgency was palpable. He had to make her understand, to reach her beyond the walls she had built around her heart. As he pushed open the door, the warmth of the shelter enveloped him, contrasting sharply with the chill of the night. Inside, volunteers bustled about, serving meals and organizing supplies, but all he could focus on was Clara. His eyes scanned the room frantically until he spotted her sitting in a corner, sketching in a worn-out notebook. Her brow was furrowed in concentration, and for a moment, he stood there, mesmerized by the way her pencil danced across the page. "Clara," he called, his voice barely above a whisper, but it sliced through the noise of the shelter. She looked up, her expression a mix of surprise and wariness. Their eyes locked, and Lucas felt the familiar ache in his chest. He took a step forward, feeling the weight of his intentions pressing down on him. "What are you doing here, Lucas?" Clara asked, her tone guarded. She closed her notebook, a protective gesture that alarmed him. "I didn't think you'd come back." "I had to," he replied, taking another step closer. "I need to talk to you. It's important." She shook her head, a flicker of pain crossing her features. "Is it about the bet?" "Because if it is, I don't want to hear it. I'm not a challenge for you to conquer." "No, it's not about the bet." Lucas insisted, his voice rising slightly in desperation. "I'm not here to fulfill some ridiculous wager or prove a point. Clara, please, just give me a moment." Clara hesitated, her defenses wavering. What could you possibly say that would change anything? You knew the stakes when this all started. "I know," he admitted, the weight of his past actions pressing heavily upon him. "But I never wanted it to be like this. When I first met you, I was just a guy looking to win a stupid bet. I thought I could impress my friends, but then you happened. You're not just a woman living on the streets. You're so much more." She scoffed, crossing her arms tightly across her chest. "And what am I to you, Lucas? A charity case? A project you can showcase to your wealthy friends? No." His voice cracked with emotion. "You're not a project. You're an artist. You dream of so much more than this life, and I've come to admire you for it. I never intended to fall for you, but I did. And I'm sorry for how it all started, but I want to make things right." Clara's expression softened slightly, but suspicion lingered in her eyes. "You say that now, but what happens when your friends remind you of the bet? What happens when you realize you can have anyone you want, and I'm just the girl from the streets?" Lucas took a deep breath, grounding himself in the moment. "I don't want anyone else. I want you. I don't care about the bet anymore. I care about you, Clara. I care about your dreams, your struggles, and your heart. I want to support you, not as a way to win a wager, but because I believe in you." Her gaze dropped to the floor, and he could see the internal battle raging within her. "But how can I trust you? How can I believe that you're really here for me and not because of some misguided sense of guilt or obligation?" "Trust takes time, I know that," Lucas replied, his voice steady but filled with sincerity. "But let me show you. Let me prove that I'm not leaving. I want to be in your life, not as a savior but as someone who genuinely cares for you. I want to share my life with you, if you'll let me." Clara looked up, her eyes searching his for any sign of insincerity. "You say that now, but what about the pressure from your friends? What about the bet? It's not just going to disappear." "I'll deal with them," he said, determination surging within him. "I'll tell them the truth. I'll face whatever consequences come my way. You mean that much to me." His words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken promises and vulnerability. Clara's breath caught in her throat as she processed his declaration. "But what if you end up regretting this? What if I'm too broken, too messed up for someone like you?" "You're not broken, Clara. You're strong. You've survived so much, and that resilience is what draws me to you. I see you, not just as someone who's struggling, but as someone with incredible talent and a spirit that won't be crushed. I admire that more than anything." For a moment, Clara remained silent, her expression a mixture of hope and fear. "And if I say yes? If I take this leap with you, what will change?" Lucas stepped closer, closing the distance between them, his heart racing. "Everything can change. We can face the world together. I want to help you achieve your dreams, not by throwing money at them but by being by your side, supporting you in every way I can. Let's create a life that you can be proud of, a life that reflects who you truly are." She searched his eyes, looking for any sign of deception, but all she saw was earnestness and a deep-seated longing. "You really mean it, don't you?" "I do," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I want you, Clara. Not just for a moment but for as long as you'll have me. I want to build something real between us." Clara's defenses began to crumble, and she felt a warmth spreading through her chest. It's so hard for me to trust. I've been let down so many times." "I understand," Lucas replied, his voice filled with compassion. "But I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. Let's take it one step at a time. I won't rush you. Just give me a chance." Her heart raced, caught between the fear of rejection and the allure of a future she had never dared to imagine. "All right," she finally said, her voice trembling. "I'll give you a chance. But I need you to understand that it won't be easy." "I wouldn't want it any other way," he said, a smile breaking across his face, relief flooding over him. "I'm ready for the challenge, Clara. Together, we can make it work." Clara nodded, feeling a flicker of hope ignite within her. It was a small step, but it felt monumental. As they stood in the shelter, the storm still raging outside, for the first time in a long time, Clara felt a sense of possibility. Maybe love could indeed bloom in the most unexpected places. Maybe their journey together was just beginning. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the small park where Clara and Lucas had decided to hold their wedding. It was a simple affair, stripped of the grandeur that Lucas was accustomed to, but it felt right. Friends who had supported them, including Mark and Lisa, gathered around, their faces lit with genuine happiness. The atmosphere was filled with laughter and soft music played on an old acoustic guitar, a touch of nostalgia that seemed to resonate with Clara's artistic sensibilities. Clara stood at the makeshift altar, a small arrangement of wildflowers resting in a glass jar. She wore a simple white dress that flowed around her knees, its fabric delicate against her skin. Her hair was loosely tied back, a few strands escaping to frame her face. She felt nervous but excited, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Lucas stood across from her, dressed in a tailored suit that hugged his form, yet he looked softer than usual, his expression earnest, brimming with affection. As their friends took their places, Lucas caught Clara's eye. She was the embodiment of beauty, but it was her spirit that captivated him. He stepped closer, the soft murmur of the crowd fading into the background. "You look stunning," he whispered, a smile playing on his lips. Clara blushed, her heart quickening. "Thank you. I can't believe we're actually doing this." "Neither can I," Lucas replied, a hint of disbelief lacing his words. "But I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else." The officiant, a kind-hearted woman from the shelter where Clara had spent so much of her time, cleared her throat, bringing the attention back to the ceremony. "Dear friends and family, we are gathered here today to celebrate the union of Clara and Lucas, two souls who have found love in the most unexpected of circumstances." As she spoke, Clara felt a swell of emotions. It was surreal to think how far they had come from that night in the bar, the reckless bet that had sparked this journey. She stole a glance at Lucas. His expression was one of pure sincerity, a reflection of the man he had become, a man who had chosen her beyond the confines of a wager. "Do you, Lucas, take Clara to be your lawfully wedded wife, to love and to cherish, in good times and in bad?" the officiant asked, her voice warm and inviting. "I do," Lucas replied, his voice steady, a promise woven into his words. "And do you, Clara, take Lucas to be your lawfully wedded husband, to love and to cherish, in good times and in bad?" Clara's heart raced. This was it. This was the moment she had both longed for and feared. "I do," she breathed, her eyes locked onto Lucas's, finding strength in his gaze. As the officiant continued, Clara felt a wave of joy enveloping her. "Now, if you would like to exchange rings." Lucas fumbled with the simple band he had chosen for Clara, a modest silver ring that caught the light just right. "Clara, with this ring, I promise to stand by you, to support you in your dreams, and to love you unconditionally. You are my heart." Clara slid the ring onto Lucas's finger, her hands trembling slightly. "And Lucas, with this ring, I promise to be your partner in all things, to share my life with you, and to love you fiercely." The officiant smiled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Lucas leaned in, their lips meeting softly, but the kiss quickly deepened, igniting a spark that sent a thrill through both of them. The crowd erupted into applause, and Clara felt herself beam with happiness, the world around them fading into insignificance. Once the ceremony concluded, they moved to the small picnic area where their friends had set up a modest reception. Laughter filled the air as people mingled, sharing stories and celebrating the couple's union. Mark approached them, a proud grin on his face. "You two did it. I can't believe you're actually married." "Neither can we," Clara chuckled, leaning into Lucas's side. "It feels surreal. Let's get some photos." "We need to capture this moment," Lisa chimed in, her camera swinging around her neck. As they posed for pictures, Clara felt a sense of belonging wash over her. She had never imagined this kind of happiness was possible. They took silly photos, serious ones, and everything in between, with Mark playfully photobombing every shot. Clara couldn't help but laugh, and Lucas's joy was infectious. "Okay, one more," Lisa called out, adjusting her camera. "Clara, you and Lucas look so cute together. Just a little closer." As they leaned in, Clara caught Lucas's eye, and they shared a moment of unspoken understanding. "No matter what happens next, we have each other," he whispered. "Always," Clara replied, her heart swelling with love. But as the festivities continued, a shadow fell over the celebration. One of Lucas's friends, a tall man with a penchant for gossip, pulled Lucas aside. "Hey, man, we need to talk." Clara watched from a distance, her heart sinking as she saw the serious expression on Lucas's face. She tried to focus on the laughter around her, but an uneasy feeling settled in her stomach. A few moments later, Lucas returned, his face clouded with concern. "What's wrong?" Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's nothing," he said quickly, but the tension in his shoulders contradicted his words. "Lucas," Clara pressed, her brow furrowing. "I can see something's bothering you." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's just one of my friends said something about the bet. He thinks it would make a good story." Clara's heart plummeted. "The bet? You mean the one that started all of this?" Lucas nodded. "He didn't mean any harm, but..." "But what?" Clara's voice rose slightly, a mix of anger and hurt bubbling to the surface. "You can't let them ruin this for us." "I know, and I won't," Lucas reassured her, stepping closer. "I love you, Clara. I chose you, not the bet. But if they find out..." Clara turned away, overwhelmed. "I can't believe this is happening. I thought we were past this." "Clara, please," Lucas said, reaching for her hand. "Let's not let this ruin our day. We can talk about it later." Taking a deep breath, Clara nodded, forcing a smile for their friends who were watching them. "You're right. Let's just enjoy the moment." As they rejoined the celebration, the laughter felt strained. Clara tried to engage with their friends, but the shadow of uncertainty lingered in the air. She could sense whispers, could see glances exchanged, and each one felt like a dagger aimed at her heart. During the toast, Lucas raised his glass, his eyes scanning the crowd. "To love," he began, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "To Clara, who has changed my life in ways I never thought possible. You are my light." Clara's heart swelled at his words, but the unease remained. She clinked her glass with his, forcing a smile. "And to Lucas, who has shown me that love can blossom in the most unexpected places. You are my strength." As they took a sip, Clara caught sight of Mark exchanging glances with one of Lucas's friends, followed by a nod. Her heart sank further as she turned back to Lucas. "Let's go outside for a moment," Clara suggested, needing fresh air and a moment away from the prying eyes. Lucas nodded, sensing her need to escape the tension. They stepped outside, the cool evening air wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. Clara took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. "Clara," Lucas began, but she interrupted him. "Is this how it's going to be? Are we always going to be fighting against what brought us together?" Her voice trembled with emotion. "No," Lucas replied, stepping closer, his hands resting on her shoulders. "We're stronger than that. I won't let anyone take away what we have. You mean too much to me. I just want to be sure you're with me for the right reasons," Clara said, searching his eyes for assurance. "I'm here because I love you," Lucas declared, his gaze intense. "The bet was a foolish mistake, but what we have is real. I don't care about the past, I care about our future." Clara softened at his words, her heart yearning for the connection they had forged. "Promise me we'll face whatever comes together." "I promise," Lucas vowed, pulling her into an embrace. "We're in this together, always." As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, the night felt alive with possibility, but the weight of the unknown loomed just out of reach, casting a shadow over their newfound happiness. As the sun set behind the skyscrapers of New York City, casting a golden hue over the bustling streets, Lucas and Clara stood side by side in front of the press, a sea of cameras flashing around them. The air was thick with anticipation, a mix of excitement and dread. Clara could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her, but there was a flicker of determination in her eyes. Lucas squeezed her hand tightly, offering silent support as they prepared to face the world together. "Thank you all for coming," Lucas began, his voice steady despite the fluttering in his stomach. "We know this story has stirred quite a bit of attention, and we want to set the record straight." The murmurs of the crowd quieted, eager to hear what he had to say. Clara glanced at him, her heart swelling with pride at his bravery. "Let's start with the truth," Clara interjected, her voice firm as she stepped forward. "What began as an impulsive bet turned into something real, something beautiful." She felt the gazes of the reporters on her, some skeptical, others intrigued. "I was homeless, struggling to find my way, and Lucas came into my life as a stranger. What I didn't expect was to find a friend, a partner, and eventually, someone I could love." A reporter raised a hand, a skeptical expression on her face. "But Clara, many people are questioning your intentions. Was this a publicity stunt? Did you fall for Lucas because of the bet?" Clara took a deep breath, her mind racing. "I understand why people might think that. But I assure you, love doesn't grow in the soil of deceit. It blooms in honesty and vulnerability." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "Lucas and I faced challenges that tested our trust and commitment. This wasn't just a game for me, and I believe it wasn't for him either." Lucas nodded, stepping in to reinforce her words. "Clara has shown me a world I was blind to. Her strength, her passion for art, and her unwavering spirit inspired me to change. I came into this thinking I could win a bet, but I walked away with so much more than I could have ever imagined." His voice softened as he looked at Clara, his eyes filled with admiration. "I love her. Not because of a wager, but because she is extraordinary." A different journalist interjected, "Clara, can you tell us more about your aspirations? What do you hope to achieve now that you have this platform?" Clara's heart raced, and she felt the gravity of her words. "I want to be an artist. I have spent years dreaming of sharing my work with the world, but life threw obstacles in my path. Now, I see an opportunity not just for myself but for others who might be struggling like I was." She took a moment to gather her thoughts, her voice steadying. I want to create art that speaks to the resilience of the human spirit, that tells stories of struggle and triumph. As Clara spoke, Lucas watched her in awe. The way she articulated her dreams, the fire in her eyes, it was beautiful. He felt a deep sense of pride in her courage. "We are working on a project together," he added, excitement creeping into his tone. "We plan to launch an art exhibit that will feature Clara's work and also highlight the stories of those who faced similar challenges. We want to raise awareness and funds for homeless shelters and art programs for underprivileged youth." The crowd buzzed with energy, and Clara felt a surge of hope. "I want to show everyone that no matter where you come from, your dreams are valid. And together, we can create change." One journalist, an older man with a skeptical expression, chimed in, "But will this project be enough? The reality of homelessness is harsh, and many people feel helpless. How do you plan to make a real difference?" Clara's eyes narrowed slightly, but she maintained her composure. "Change doesn't happen overnight. It starts with conversations, with understanding. Our project is a step toward visibility for a community that often goes unnoticed. I want to inspire others to get involved, to volunteer, and to support initiatives that provide resources and opportunities." Lucas stepped forward again, his voice confident. "We're also collaborating with local organizations that help people in need. It's not just about showcasing Clara's art, it's about building a network of support for those who need it most. We will use our platform to advocate for change, and we invite everyone to join us." The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of their words hanging in the air. Clara could sense a shift in the atmosphere, a growing respect for their cause. "Clara, there's been talk of your past, about your father and the legacy he left behind. Can you share more about that?" another reporter asked, his voice softer now. Clara hesitated, feeling a wave of vulnerability wash over her. "My father was a kind man who believed in helping others. Before he passed, he donated a significant amount to charities focused on homelessness and the arts. It's something I've tried to carry forward in my own life." Her voice trembled slightly as she continued. "I want to honor his memory and the values he instilled in me. I want to be a voice for those who feel voiceless." Lucas watched her, feeling a swell of admiration. "Clara's generosity and compassion are part of what drew me to her. She wasn't just a victim of circumstance, she was a fighter, someone who wanted to make a difference." Suddenly, Clara took a deep breath, her determination surging back. "And I want to emphasize that love is not limited by circumstances. Lucas and I come from different worlds, but our connection is real. We've faced challenges, but we've chosen to support each other. Love can be a powerful force for change." The room erupted into applause, and Clara felt a rush of emotions. This was the moment she had been waiting for, a chance to share her truth and advocate for those who needed a voice. As the press conference wrapped up, Clara felt a sense of relief mingled with excitement. They had turned a story that could have been detrimental into one of hope and inspiration. The media had transformed from skeptical onlookers to allies in a cause that mattered deeply to both her and Lucas. Later that evening, as Clara and Lucas strolled through the city hand in hand, the lights of New York twinkling around them, Clara couldn't help but smile. "Do you think they believed us?" she asked, glancing up at him. Lucas chuckled softly, "I think they did. You were amazing up there. You spoke from the heart, and that resonates." "I just hope it makes a difference," she replied, her voice thoughtful. "It already has," Lucas assured her. "We've started a conversation. And with your art, we will continue to inspire change." Clara nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her. Together, they were not just a couple, they were a team ready to make an impact. The challenges they faced were daunting, but in each other, they found strength. As they turned a corner, Clara stopped and looked up at the stars peeking through the city lights. "You know," she said softly, "this journey has taught me that love can bloom even in the most unexpected places. And it's our choice to nurture it." Lucas smiled, pulling her closer. I couldn't agree more. We're just getting started, Clara. Together, we can create something beautiful. And in that moment, under the vastness of the sky, they knew they were ready to face whatever came next, united in love and purpose, ready to change the world around them.